Is the United States of America being shifted into a Muslim jihad, or are the United States citizens of America just a bunch of paranoid frenzies? And if so, is this being changed under the 1964 Civil Acts right? All of that and more coming up right here on TCLN.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top, yeah. You know I'm always honest. There ain't no way I'm ever stopping till I'm on top, yeah.
Now, I know you saw lately in the media all that has been going on when it comes to election time, right? So what we have taken notice of and what Americans have taken notice of, and particularly in Texas, there has been talk about political Muslim rings. According to some, the United States is being shifted into a Muslim jihad. And if that's the case, what is a jihad? How do Americans define jihad? Well, I'm going to go there on today's episode. I'm IBK with TCLN Network. I love to educate, to elevate, so that we go from situations to solutions. Now, some solutions, or some situations, shall I say, are not always that solutional. And what I mean by that is that we don't always have a in your hand solution. But if we get the conversation out, we get the truth out, we get understanding out, sometimes we may be able to look at those factors and be able to decide for ourselves what direction we are headed in a nation. So I'm going to go over a few facts from the news and what's been trending from mainstream news. And then I'm going to take a little bit of time to educate us on what an actual jihad is. Because a lot of Americans, of course, according to 9/11 and according to media and according to other sources, have taken jihad to mean terrorism. It is associated with terrorism, where there's another term. It's not just terrorism. There's another term that's associated with jihad, and I want to get into that today. I also want to get into how is the 1964 Civil Rights Act being abused and the ways that it can be abused, and what is the U.S. government actually doing about it. Because again, that act was put in place for particular people who look like myself, right? Originally, that's what it was put in place. All of the injustices, all of the doors that were closed, all of the things that impacted people from prejudice, from injustices, and from people just not being afforded opportunities that they should have been afforded just for simply being a person. Let's start with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. What was it, which plenty of you I'm pretty sure know, but what was it originally intended for? When they started that and Lyndon B. Johnson signed it into office, what was it intended for? Now, the 1964 Act of 1964 was a reaction to a specific problem: the systemic oppression, segregation, and discrimination faced by Black Americans in the United States, especially in the South. If Black Americans had been treated equally, there would have been no need for this 1964 Act. That's what prompted it. That's what caused it. The law wasn't arbitrary. It was designed to correct real injustices that were being ignored or enforced at the state level. The existence of this law stems directly from unjust treatment of Black people. Without the context, the laws wouldn't have, again, be created in the same form. So, in the 119th U.S. Congress, starting 2025, there have been 4 Muslims in the House, according to the Pew Research. And in 2025 election cycle, advocacy group CAIR report, 42 Muslim Americans won public office, local, state, mayoral, which is mayor, judicial. And this is according to Radiant News. Okay. So I don't know if you heard, but in recent months, Texas Governor Greg Abbott raised alarm about Muslim organizations, citing concerns that some might be operating beyond purely civic or religious purposes. Meanwhile, over 40 Muslims have been elected to office across the country, many supported by local organizations. Some critics argue that the certain civil rights protections are being evoked strategically for influence, property, or political leverage, rather than to address real discrimination, what the law was truly intended for. Okay, so now, since there is such a frenzy about the word jihad, anytime people hear jihad in America, it's automatically associated with terrorism, right? So the first thing I want to do is I want to cover what, according to Muslims and the Muslim community, what the actual word actually means. So let's just step into that for a little bit, okay? So there are two types of main meanings when it comes to the word jihad. Number one, the greater jihad. This main meaning is the internal spiritual struggle to be a better person, resist temptation, do what is right, and live according to morals and values. Most Muslims understand jihad this way, the struggle within oneself. There's a lesser jihad. This refers to physical struggle, which historically meant protecting the Muslim community if under attack. So why are so many Americans, when it comes to that word jihad, they go, they do a double take, right? Well, there's a reason. 9/11, all of the things that people have heard in the media, on radios, on televisions, on social media. And it tends to, like, whether they rumors, whether they true, or whatever it may be, it tends to stick, right? We can all admit negativity tends to stick more than positivity. Even if it's true, let's just say it's true. It sticks more than positivity. You understand what I'm saying? So when people have been through such things as attacks, as 9/11, the recent plane attacks all over America, even though that's not associated with Muslims per se, but all of these things are embedded in the consciousness and in the minds of, I guess you could say, many American people, right? So when you have people being elected, and people are not used to that, right? They're not used to so many Muslims being elected at one time. People began to question. People began to say, what's going on? You understand what I'm saying? And then when you have a governor that comes up and say, hey, there are whole systems that are in Plano, Texas, that has been around for years, and we are afraid they're not there for the reasons that they were posing to be, right? This kind of information begins to raise alarm. So that's what I want to talk about a little bit. I want to get into the 1964 Civil Rights Act and what it actually is for. And is it being abused? And if it's being abused, what are the abuses that we should be looking out for, right? How do you know what abuse is if you don't know what the abuses are to look out for? The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was created to end systemic injustice, primarily against Black Americans. Over the decades, these laws expanded to protect race, religion, national origin, and more. You guys know this, right? It falls up under sexual orientation. Some states do elderly. It just depends, right? Especially when it comes up under fair housing laws. So fair housing laws, it could be the elderly, it could be military, it can go on and on and on. So it just depends on what state you live in, how they expand the laws. So remember, when it comes to fair housing, Fair housing is under the Civil Rights Act too, also. But when it comes to fair housing, remember you have your federal laws, which is your main laws of race, religion, national origin, and stuff like that, right? So it's about 7 of them, I believe. And then when it comes to your state, it may be more added on. You understand what I'm saying? Because your state kind of creates their own laws also. So remember that anytime you're dealing with laws, you always have your federal and then you have your state. So your state has to abide by federal, and then your each individual state have to abide by whichever state you stay in, abide by state laws, right? Now, they were designed to shield vulnerable communities from real discrimination. We're talking about discrimination. They call these classes, by the way, race, national origin, religion, and the 7 classes. They're called classes. They identify them as classes, right? And not to be a tool, these are not to be used as a tool for political leverage. And that's the problem. Some people believe that these laws are being tarnished, that they're being manipulated, and they're being used for the wrong reasons, right? So that's why it's a discrepancy that's going on, and talk. Some people do, some people don't, but there is talk about it. And on TCLN network, I like to address stuff like that. We're not to shy away from things that we need to talk about. We are to address them and to understand them, not to run in fear, not to run in anger, not to run in misinformation, but to try to understand what is really going on. I think people are going to really always have their personal opinions, but at the end of the day, I think the more information you have, the more you can kind of understand, you understand what I'm saying, and how to deal with it a little bit better. Now, fast forward to today, Muslim Americans historically marginalized in civic life have increasingly participated in politics in the U.S. Some of these communities, like those in Plano, Texas, have organized and mobilized voters. This is perfectly legal and constitutionally protected. But here is where things get complicated. Again, in recent months, Governor Abbott has raised alarms. It's about property, right? So historically, the South has been known, to fight over property. I think all states have. That's just the way it is. But definitely the South, right? Property, property, property. So these alarms are being raised, and Governor Abbott is saying, listen, the way that they are getting this property is up under certain laws. But according to these particular laws, there are certain things that they should not get property for. And according to Governor Abbott, he feels that they're getting property in the wrong way concerning these laws, right? Let's dig a little bit more into the Civil Rights Act. Now, many of you know what it is, but there may be some people that don't. Believe it or not, guys, there are still some people in this time and day that may not know what the Civil Rights Act really is, right? So it was passed July the 2nd, 1964, signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson. Who created this law? It was created by the U.S. Congress and its key figures. President John F. Kennedy proposed the original legislation in 1963 after major civil rights protests in Birmingham, Alabama, and the March on Washington. He was assassinated before it was passed. President Lyndon B. Johnson used the political power to push the bill through Congress, signed the bill into law July 2nd, 1964. Civil rights leaders such as Dr. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, John Lewis, A. Philip Randolph, and many others pursued the government through activism, which directly influenced Congress to act. Okay? So just a little bit of background, right? What was the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Like, what did it actually do? What was it actually for? Well, it was against racial segregation in public places, right? Because blacks wasn't entitled to drink from same water fountains, be in same buildings, you understand what I'm saying, and do the same things as whites were able to do. Employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. So this is your federal. This is now a federal, has been for a while, since 1964, a federal law. You cannot discriminate under these classes. Unequal voter registration requirements. So those were the particular things that that law was fighting for, right? Because blacks didn't have equal rights to vote. They wasn't considered to be, equal with whites when it came to employment, when it came to opportunities, and especially when it came to the purchase of land and property. Okay, that's where the Fair Housing Act stepped in. Later, they went on to, because they went from race and color, and they went on to expand it to religion, sex, national origin, and a few others. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 is part of a broader principle in U.S. law. Federal protections are often created in response to patterns of discrimination or injustice. It starts with one group, but legally it's supposed to protect all. So it started with blacks, right? That's what it started with, because that's where the battle was. That was the battleground. That was what the civil rights movement was all about. That's what it was about, right? But it has expanded to be about all race, all religion. You understand what I'm saying? It's expanded. So this is where some abuses can tend to step in, right? Because it started one way and then it began to expand. And now that it's expanded, if people are not careful, people can just come up under the law and try to claim what they want to claim and kind of misabuse the law, right? So we all have laws. We have laws every day, not just civil rights laws. We have all kind of laws. We have criminal laws. We have civil laws. We have all kind of laws, right? And if not careful, people can know laws, study laws, understand laws, and then they can begin to misuse those laws in the wrong way. So that's what we're talking about, right? So race, the original focus of it all. Black Americans were denied basic rights. They were segregated in schools, unequal employment, restricted voting, and separate public facilities. The effect of the law made discrimination illegal for all races, but it was motivated by Black Americans' struggle. So again, if there was no Black American struggle, this law probably wouldn't even took effect in the first place. So that's what a lot of people really need to understand, right? Because that's what it was motivated by. Key idea. Let me give you a key idea. If systemic racial oppression didn't exist, this law would not be necessary. So that means that everything that people are fighting about today, it probably wouldn't even be in place if this discrimination against Black people was not happening in the first place. Now, I know you heard me say that multiple times, but people really need to understand what the law was about, what it was birthed for. You understand what I'm saying? Why it was birthed the way it birthed. And then it went on to expand religion. You understand what I'm saying? From race and color to religion to, beliefs and all that kind of stuff. It began to expand from sex, gender, national origin. Now, the bigger picture, there's a pattern. Discrimination occurs, society recognizes the injustice. Law is written. So this is the pattern. Discrimination occurs, society recognizes an injustice, and a law is written. The law protects not just the original targeted group, which were Black people. Now it's to protect all people, right? And it's up under a class known as race, known as religion, known as sex, so this is where these classes come from. So any one of these classes, if you discriminate, there can be lawsuits, there can be fines, punishment, all kind of stuff, depending on what fields you work in, depending on what you do as a career, right? So I just wanted to get you to really understand how they break this stuff down just a little bit. I make it simple. I don't try to get into all the foo-foo, just making it simple, right? Simple so you can understand. And it's about the deliberate misuse of civil rights protections by people who are not genuinely discriminated against, but who claim protections for other benefits, such as political, social, or financial gain. Okay, so there's a difference. So that law is set in place for the discrimination of those classes. You understand what I'm saying? So when you are discriminated against, when you are denied an application, when you are discriminated against, when words happen or when denials happen for, reasons other than like everything's fine, your financial turnout, everything's fine, you qualify according to their rules, but you're being discriminated against maybe because of race, sex, national origin, or anything like that. So really understand what that law is for. Now, let's get to what we're really talking about here. What misuse looks like when it comes to filing lawsuits without real discrimination. Let's talk about it. Some individuals file civil rights complaints simply to gain leverage. For example, in workplace disputes or housing, even if no real bias occurred. Example, an employee claims racial discrimination after being disciplined, even though the discipline applied equally to all employees. The claim can pressure employers into settlements without true bias. Now, you understand that, right? So that means somebody can run up, yeah, I'm gonna claim discrimination because you disciplined me. You understand what I'm saying? That is true. That is true. People can do that and they do it all the time. But on the reverse of that, what I've learned, because I worked in corporate for 30 some years, trust me, corporate America fully understands these laws. They are not trying to get lawsuit. They fully understand these laws. And some bad corporate characters, you heard what I said, some bad corporate characters, knowing the law, understanding the law, know how to get around the law. So they can actually be discriminating and targeting someone. You understand what I'm saying? Even in that same vein. In that same exact vein. You understand? So even though the discipline is for all, that doesn't mean that they're upholding it righteously for all. They could be taking it and just targeting one person to make that person miserable, to try to get that person to quit, to try to provoke that person so they can fire that person. So people have learned how to tamper and work with these laws. That's why I'm showing you the double-edged sword, the double side, right? Now, using civil rights claims for political or ideological purposes. Example, organizations or individuals may evoke religious freedom or racial discrimination laws to block policies or projects they disagree with rather than addressing a genuine injustice. Now, we know that happens all the time. If people disagree with you, they really don't want you on their team. It's just that simple. It happens all the time. If you're not a Christian, you understand what I'm saying? You may not be invited to the party. You understand? Because people want people around them who think like them. It's just the way it is. Now, nobody's going to say that out loud, but that is the truth. And that don't just go for Christians. That can go for Christians, Muslims. That can go for any type of group. You understand what I'm saying? That can go for witches, Wanakas, anything. You understand? People are people and they gravitate towards what they believe, what they want, what they desire, and they like to be surrounded around that. And when someone's different and they think different, discrimination tends to pop up. It's just that simple. But again, in the misuse of this law, you understand what I'm saying? For political or ideological purposes, organizations or individuals may invoke religious freedom or racial discrimination laws to block policies or projects, you understand that they disagree with. That's not what the law is supposed to be used for. And people can do that. And they've been doing it for years. Case in point, some companies or groups resisting DEI initiatives claim discrimination to avoid changing hiring practices, even when no systemic bias existed. So you understand that, guys, right? immigration or citizenship exploitation, claiming constitutional or civil rights protections like birthright citizenship for children born in the U.S. as a strategy rather than remedy for injustice. Okay? This is not discrimination in traditional sense. It's leveraging the law's protections for strategic and financial advantage. There is a total difference between people being here for years and they're not really citizens, and people gonna do they do. They gonna meet people, they gonna do the do, and folks gonna have babies. And maybe not even intentional. People just have babies. People do the do, they have babies. And they want to use that protection of the birthright citizenship, right? And then you have those who they understand that law fully, and they have communicated that law to people, and they say, listen, do it this way so that you can have, access with your baby here. And if you have a baby and you do all these things, because it used to happen in our community all the time back in the day, they would find people, marry this person, marry that person so they can get citizenship. It wouldn't even be a really real relationship. Pay you some money, marry this person, that person going off with somebody else, you going off with somebody else. But when it comes to the law and you have to comply, and you have to go make those visits, you know what dates you need to go on, you know what you need to do. That happens in America all the time. It's been happening for years. It was happening when I was younger. Again, misuse with the laws. Do you understand that? Misuse in property or religious contexts. Individuals or organizations sometimes claim protections under civil rights laws to shield themselves from legitimate regulations, zoning laws, or restrictions. Example, a religious group claiming civil rights protections to build a facility while using it for political organizing that goes beyond your worship or your practice or your religion or your belief. In other words, under other underlining motives. So do you see why all of this can be a problem? Because these laws are simple. Do not discriminate against race. You understand what I'm saying? National origin, color, religion. You understand? Do not discriminate. But people have studied these laws also inside out, and they have learned how to maneuver around these laws to get what they want. In a corporate world, they understand these laws fully. Trust me, they're not trying to get lawsuits. So even when they are discriminating or they doing something they have no business doing, they understand those laws so well that they understand how to manipulate information, how to critique it, and then how to make it look like, well, this is not discrimination. This falls maybe under a civil suit, but not discrimination. And they know that most of the time people cannot afford an attorney. You understand what I'm saying? And that people don't want to go that long route of trying to prove all of that. So they just say, you understand what I'm saying? It happens all the time. I've talked to EEOC before, and they said, listen, they know that these things are happening. They said, but it just doesn't fall up under the discrimination bracket. So there's nothing they can do. They said the majority of it falls up under civil rights, right? And I'm not civil rights. I'm sorry. I said that wrong. They said the majority of it falls under a civil case, a civil suit. You understand what I'm saying? So there's a difference. A civil suit, that means it's outside of falling up under EEOC. That means you would have to go get an attorney to deal with the issues that you're actually dealing with. How many people can afford those attorneys? How many people can deal with that? And then you got to deal with the interlocking structure, because the world is not fair, and we know that. The interlocking structure. Let me give you an example. Real estate. How powerful real estate is. Real estate is nothing but law. You're looking at buildings and you're looking at land, right? It's called real estate, real property, land, air rights, all of that, right? But you have to understand it's nothing but law. All of it is governed by law. So let's just say you work in the real estate industry. Let's say you work in property management. And let's just say your boss has been giving you a hard time. right? And you know, without a shadow of doubt, you being discriminated against. You know you are. You kind of being left out for meetings. You hear people gossiping about you, all kinds of stuff happening. But those are things you can't prove, right? You can't really prove that. You have to be able to prove things concretely, that you were actually discriminated against race, color, sex, national origin. You have to have concrete evidence. If not, EEOC says it doesn't fall under us. Maybe you need to go get a civil attorney. You see how that works? People have learned how to still mistreat your butt, still do what they do to you, and then work around those laws. They understand how to do it. And so when it comes to why we're discussing religious groups today, what you call Muslims or all different kind of groups, and people are feeling concerned, you understand what I'm saying, is because people understand that people know how to use laws to their advantage, especially when America has done that all their life. So usually when people have done that, they understand that others can do that. So people will feel a certain kind of way, right? Now, why is this such a problem? Why is this such a problem? Why is this law a beautiful thing, but if not careful, can be abused and misused and used as a political weapon against the American people? Or should I say, United States citizens of America? Dilutes the law's purpose when it's misused and misabused. Civil rights protections were solely created to correct systemic and historical injustices as the whole purpose of it. Misuse undermines the law credibility and can make courts more skeptical of legitimate claims. Okay? It encourages opportunistic claims. If people see the law as a tool for personal or political gain, they may file more frivolous complaints. This can log the legal system up and divert resources from real victims. It also creates political weaponization. Some groups use these claims to attack opponents or advance agendas, making civil rights laws a political tool rather than a shield against injustice. Okay, so if that law, it's like a knife, right? So let's just say you got a birthday cake, right? And let's give a simple example. You have a birthday, they make all kind of knives, right? Cut meat, cut cakes, to pare an apple, to do all kind of stuff. So you have the right tool for the right purpose, right? You don't have a big old steak knife to cut an apple, right? Like that just don't match, right? You need a peeling and a paring knife, right? So the tool is 1964 Civil Rights Act to protect against injustice in those classes. So let's give an example of these knives, right? You have all these different type of knives. You use different type of knives for a reason. Let's just say it's a birthday party and we're going to cut a cake. So you use one of the simple knives. It don't have to be that strategic or that sharp because cake is easy. And you're cutting your cake, right? Right. But the knife could have a pointed edge. It could have a round edge. It can even be a butter knife, depending on what type of knife it is. Now, let's just say somebody get drunk and people get into it at the party. You understand what I'm saying? Now they want to take that same knife, which is not intended for that purpose, and start stabbing someone because they got into an argument, they got into a disagreement, or because there's hatred and malice and envy and jealousy, and all of it has came to a head, and it's at this party, right? And that same knife can be misused for the wrong reasons. Same thing with laws. Laws are good, depending on what law it is. Some laws are wicked. We'll talk about that on another day, another subject, another hour. But laws can be good, they can be just, and they can really help a people But at the same time, if those laws are not in the right hand of the right people, you understand what I'm saying? It can be a sword and it can be a weapon and it can destroy. So hope that little analogy help you like understand what I'm really talking about, right? Now, Muslim civil rights groups in Texas. Let's talk about this. Recently, Texas Governor Abbott designated the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR. Again, that's the Council on American Islamic Relations, and the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization. You can catch this article right on The Guardian and the Texas Tribune. So you can look it up in The Guardian and the Texas Tribune, okay? Again, recently Texas Governor Greg Abbott designated the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, and the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization. As a result, Abbott's proclamation restricts these groups from acquiring property in Texas, among other legal consequences. And that's according to the Houston Chronicle. In response, the CAIR filed a federal lawsuit arguing that the designation is unconstitutional, defamatory, so defamation basically, and politically motivated, according to the Texas Tribune. There was also controversy over Epic City, EPIC City, a planned Muslim-centered community in Texas. Critics, including Abbott, claimed it might be a Sharia compound, SHARIA compound, but a Justice Department civil rights investigation closed without charges. And that was according to the AP. All right. So as you can see, this was the back and forth thing that was going on, right? And of course, I know you've seen it on TikTok. People have been talking and discussing about how did 42 Muslims get elected as in mayor, as in other city offices and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's a lot of talk going on. And I think the reason why people are so concerned, because what people have heard over the years about Muslims, about jihad, about 9/11, about terrorists, and how these terrorists were in America and they did these things that they did, right? So they were here in America, living in America, resources in America, and then all of a sudden they flipped the switch and these things happened. So that would naturally bring up some concerns, right? I'm not here to judge either or. I'm just here to be honest as a person. That would naturally bring up certain concerns, like what's going on, you know. Is the United States of America moving more towards a Muslim territory or terrain? Or, you know, what is actually happening? These are valid questions. Some people can have the courage to ask these questions and make sure they stay professional, not accusing a group or anything. And then some people just go off the rails. Oh, let me tell you what's going on. And I got a revelation and this and this and that. And I'm not here to judge or question either one. Because some people do have insight and some people don't. Some people just like to start rumors. But what I am here to say is that the 1964 law is not meant for us to abuse it. It's meant for a purpose and a reason. And it should be used for such. You understand what I'm saying? Black people went through hell. And a lot of Black people are just not respected today. Let's be honest. I don't care what nobody say. They just not respected today. But the one thing that people do like to partake of is the 1964 Civil Rights Act. People love it. They love it because they understand the power of the law. You understand what I'm saying? They understand the power of that law. They probably understand it more than black folks do, which is sad because black people are always pushed to the back burner to not stand up for their rights. You understand what I'm saying? Oh, y'all being too much, or oh, y'all this, or y'all still crying and still whining. While there are other groups and other people and other things that are taking that law and they are running with it, getting what they want. You understand what I'm saying? So, that's just my input on some of that stuff. Again, I'm not here to judge the Muslim community. I'm not even here to say nothing negative about them. But I am here to say there are concerns that the U.S., that United States citizens have. It's just that simple. There are concerns. I don't care what nobody say. And it's because various reasons, It's not just paranoia. It's been because of events, fights, battles, things that people have seen, different groups saying out of their own mouths. You understand what I'm saying? Not everything is not rumor, people looking at social, seeing people say things, just like when people were looking at the president from Israel, and he literally just saying stuff out his mouth about Americans. We like, oh, okay. So that's how you really feel, huh? And so that's what you planning on doing. You planning on keeping tabs on us, and you planning on monitoring us, and you planning on doing, so when people say things out their own mouth, everything is not rumor. Everything is not speculation. Some things is people are just observing and listening to information, and it does bring about concerns. Do you understand that? So I wanted to talk about that, and I hope you guys take this information, break it down for yourselves. Don't take no information at face value. Know what your spirit is telling you as an individual, but also make sure you educate yourself, right? Make sure you educate yourself. Okay? I want to give two key examples of alleged abuse or misuse of the civil rights protection. Number one, birthright citizenship, just so you can kind of drill it home and really understand how it can be misused. In 2025, Executive Order 14160, so 14160, was issued by President Trump against aiming to restrict birthright citizenship. This is to prevent automatic citizenship for children born in the U.S. to parents who are undocumented or temporarily present. This has sparked a class action suit, Barbara versus Trump, with a judge granting a preliminary injunction blocking the policy. Supporters of Abbott framing and a similar arguments say immigrants are exploiting constitutional rights by having children in the U.S. to claim citizenship. This ties directly to civil rights and constitutional protections that are being misused as immigration strategy. Critics, legal experts strongly push back. They say that the 14th Amendment was designed precisely to guarantee citizenship for people born on U.S. soil, regardless of their parents' legal status. So that's the concerns there, right? So as you can see. Now, I'm going to be very, very honest with you. I'm just going to share my insight. I know for a fact that there are two sides to every story. There are people that literally just get pregnant, right? On visas, all kind of stuff. It could be just people, just in general. People going to get pregnant because people always doing the do. Folks can't keep their leg closed. So folks just do the do. So folks going to have babies. You understand what I'm saying? And it should be a balance to it, especially if people been here for years and years and years and years. They pretty much been in America for years. Okay, that reminds me of the Ian Roberts, the superintendent Ian Roberts that was back in Des Moines, Iowa, right? That man been here for so many years, honey. They should have just went on and made him a citizen. Like, the man contributed so much to the U.S. education system in Des Moines, one of the largest public school districts. So why would you feel the need to deport a man that you allowed to be here all those years? You understand what I'm saying? I really don't understand that. You understand? And now all of a sudden he just has to go. So I think sometimes people just need to like really look into a balance of things, right? When it comes to these laws. And then there's the other side when it comes to birthright citizenship. There are people who plot and plan, have this baby, get married to this person, we not really in love. You gonna give you a little money under the table. We gonna go to these meetings. We gonna go to where these people tell us to go. But you know why we doing this. I don't really like you. You don't really like me. We saw it growing up. I'm not gonna lie, I'm from Texas. I saw it all day long. So I know it exists. It's real, right? Now, number 2, Muslim civil rights groups and state level political targeting, particularly in Texas. It could be across states because as you can see, Muslims don't just exist in Texas, they exist everywhere, right? Texas Governor Greg Abbott recently designated, again, the Council on American Islamic Relations and Muslim Brotherhood as foreign terrorist organizations under the state law. You can go to texas.gov and look that up, right? Because of this designation, these groups are prohibited from owning or buying land in Texas. Abbott directed the Texas Department of Public Safety to open criminal investigations into Carr and the Brotherhood for intimidation, harassment, or attempts to impose Sharia law. That's SHARIA law. Texas.gov. You can go find that. Carr responded by filing a federal suit arguing that the designation violates their constitutional First Amendment property rights and that Abbott's claims are politically motivated and not backed by solid evidence. This is according to Dallas News. Legal scholars have raised serious due process concerns. It's unclear what the process is for these groups to challenge the state level designation, how Texas determines affiliates, and whether there's a proper evidentiary process. So whether there's a proper process that's going to prove all these things, right? Why is this seen as abuse? Civil rights protections are being cried by a group, Carr, to shield itself from political attack, claiming civil rights status while being seen by some as ideological or politically aligned with broader Islamic movements. Some see the land ownership ban as the terrorist label as punitive tools, not based on federal designation, but on political framing, a way to restrict Muslim civic power under the guise of security. So, as you can see, this could set a precedent, you all. Other civil rights groups might be targeted for similar views or affiliations, or if it goes through, you understand what I'm saying, other groups who may be forming as what you call political weapons may come up under that law and misabuse it also. So do you see how deep this runs, guys? It stuff be running deep, y'all. Law is good, but law misapplied can be horrible. Do you understand that? So guys, as long as you understand that, and why I brought this is just formally to inform you and to inspire you. Be aware. Be aware. Be aware of conversations around you. Be aware if you're being manipulated. Be aware if you are having your own biases or not. Be aware of it all. Because we can be manipulated. People love to con you and make you think something happening that's not happening. People love to hold a conversation before you. Like I'll give you an example. Right before I was coming this morning to do this episode, I was pretty much kind of being targeted. You understand what I'm saying? Not targeted in a way where I'm being harassed, but all of a sudden you just start seeing Muslims pop out of nowhere. And they just start laying down, these rugs or whatever you call them, the things that they pray on, and just start kneeling and praying. That's what I mean by being manipulated. You understand what I'm saying? You don't want to be manipulated. You want to understand that I'm not going to judge you based off of everything I'm hearing, but I'm not also going to believe you based off what you putting before me either. You understand? Because life is more than just you putting on this show. You understand what I'm saying? Because before I was going to even do this episode, I haven't seen nobody running around doing that. I just haven't. I haven't seen no bus drivers running around, driving the bus, laying it on top of the bus, and just doing that. You don't see bus drivers doing that. And so that's what I mean by being manipulated. People can manipulate you with actions. They can manipulate you to make you think a certain kind of way. Maybe they feel intimidated. This goal of this episode is to never like just throw out dust on you or make you look bad. That's not what this episode is all about. This episode is to say, hey, what is this law actually for? And to make sure whether we are American, whether we are business or we are a corporation, whether we you call yourself U.S. United States citizens or whatever, you understand what I'm saying? To make sure that we are not misabusing that law. That law should not be misused because there's going to be too many people that's going to actually need it. And if you keep tampering with it and you keep playing with it, then people just not going to have a taste for it because they're going to think every case coming out, oh, here go another one of these cases. You know what I'm saying? So again, that's what I mean by just being manipulated. People will manipulate you with actions, manipulate you with coonery, buffoonery. You'll just start seeing stuff out the blue you never saw before. And you're like, okay, what is this all about? You know, but educating yourself, informing yourself, and to recognize, is it your bias or is it someone else's bias? Do you understand what I'm saying? Or is it just a plain truth? Because you can hear people talking out their mouth, talking out their spirit. People will reveal themselves, you know. And so, again, you know, guys, it's up to us to use great judgment, but it's even up to our United States citizens and leaders to use better judgment. It's up to you guys to use solid, sound judgment and to really understand what is going on in this country, what is the pulse of this country, and what is the reality of this country, of this place that is called the United States of America. I am going to sign off. This is IBK. It has been a pleasure to share this information with you today. If you have enjoyed it and you like more content like this, like again at TCLN, we don't try to sow disinformation or try to sow misinformation. Try to stick to the facts, but also give commentary because that's what we do. We comment, right? So we give our commentary, right? But sticking as close to the facts as possible. I would love for you guys to put your comments below. If you are watching by YouTube, share with me what some of your thoughts. What experiences have you had with Muslims? And I'm not talking about black Muslims like what do you call Farrakhan and stuff like that. But I'm talking about, you know, Muslims that are considered from a different country and stuff like that. What has been your experiences? Have they been positive? Have they been negative? What are you thinking in today's society? What is going on, right? You are allowed to share yourself. You're allowed to share your input. Do be careful. Don't discriminate. But if you've had real experiences now, real experiences, you are allowed to express those experiences in this world, and nobody should ever try to shame you, fame you, or anything else, right? So guys, I would love your support. Thank you for watching. You can support right there at the information will be below right here on the lower third. Or you can also support if you are watching by YouTube. The information is in the description. Join me next week for another episode. Okay?
Thank you for
You guys
tuning
be
in to
blessed.
TCLN Network, Austin Public. TCLN Network is independently produced by IBK Media Productions. To support TCLN Network financially, visit paypal.me/TCLN Network. Also, TCLN Channel Podcasts. To learn more about TCLN Network, visit thecreativeleadershipnetwork.com and follow on all socials TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at IBK Media Works.